All right. Well, you guys can go ahead and turn over to Deuteronomy chapter 5. All right, we're going to start there, and we'll move kind of a little bit throughout. We always spend time in the Word because, like we said, we believe that God speaks in His Word to us, and He tells us who Jesus is and helps us know who we are. And as you're turning over there, I've been thinking this week, right? Today's Mother's Day, so I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about this particular message, and I started thinking of the story of Rapunzel. The old Grimm's fairy tale. And a little while ago, Disney did it. They did it as Tangled. And props to Disney. They were able to tell that story with the exact opposite point that the original story was given. That takes some doing. Anyhow, the original story is a story about self-control, and about how to cultivate the importance of self-control and what happens when you let your passions and your desires just run wild. And Disney kind of took that and they turned it around and they told a story about being true to your passions and being true to your dreams and learning to get out of the relationships in your life that control you and prevent you from being true to your passions and true to your dreams. And to be fair, Tangled's got some pretty cool pictures of sacrificial love that come out in it, so I really like it for that. So I don't want to just knock it as a story. But in order to make that shift in their version of the story, they need a villain. And they need a really strong villain. They need a manipulative, controlling, abusive villain. And so they cast the role of the witch as the mom, which is kind of sad to bring up on Mother's Day. But this is kind of like running through my head today as I'm thinking about that this story has been told of the mother who controls her children and the mother who keeps her child locked in a tower, that we need to be freed from our parents or from our mothers. And that's really the opposite of the heart of God for the parent and the child in their relationship. God expresses in His 10 commandments in Deuteronomy 5 that what He wants for this relationship between parent and child is that children would honor their father and their mother. As the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. And so my goal today is for us to sort of just explore this commandment and think about how God's heart is for us to be able to honor our parents, or to honor our parents. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And why is that important? And in seeing this call to honor our parents, I think that we also see a picture of Jesus. And so we get to follow Jesus as well as we explore Deuteronomy. All right. So let's first start by just asking the question, what is this commandment? What does this commandment actually say? To begin with, there's a call to action. There's two parts to this. There's a call to action, honor your father and mother, and then there's the motivation, the reason why you should do this. That your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God is giving you. That call to action, honoring parents, is pretty straightforward. When I think about it, I think it kind of breaks down into two basic ideas. The golden rule. When Jesus was doing ministry, He said, it's not enough for you to look at the people around you and just avoid doing the things to them that you don't want them to do to you. It's not just a negative thing. Like, stop doing the things that other people you don't want done to you. He actually makes it proactive, and He says, I want you to do the things to other people that you would like them to do to you. And that is that's what we call the golden rule. And this is, like, if you will, the basic idea of honoring somebody. If you will, honoring might be just making a point of saying, I am going to do to this person the way that I would like it done to me. I'm going to treat this person the way I would want to be treated. I'm going to go out of my way to do that because I want to honor that person. It's Mother's Day, right? So on Mother's Day, ways to honor mothers, what do? We're like, well, I love it when people spend time with me. I like hanging out with people. I like it when people want to be around me. So to honor my mother, I want to go hang out with her. I want to be with her. I want to spend time with her. I really like it when people listen to me talk, which is probably why I'm a pastor. So, when my mom's talking, I want to make sure I listen. I want to make sure that I hear what she has to say, and I care about what she has to say. And the list could keep going on, right? You can start to fill in these different pieces. How do you want to be treated? Well, honoring someone is making a point of doing those things for them. Honoring parents, do these things for them. This is really helpful as adults, because as adults, we can't just sort of navigate this along a simplistic line of just obey whatever your parents tell you to do. But we can treat our parents the way that we would like to be treated, and we can go out of our way to treat them the way we would like to be treated. The second dynamic, though, is sort of that simpler version of it. Across the book of Deuteronomy, you have this call to obedience, this call to listen to the law of God. And in doing that, we are honoring God. So as he calls us to honor our parents, for children, I can look at my kid in the back row. You're supposed to obey your parents. You're supposed to do what they ask you to do. And so obedience is the second dynamic, or perhaps even more the more fundamental, the more simplistic version of this honoring parents. So that's a call. Obey, treat them as you would want to be treated, with honor, with respect. Go out of your way to treat them that way. And this call is given a promise. It's given a motivation. It's like if you really should do this. It's the only commandment that has this with it, so that's kind of significant. And it's this sort of blessing, this covenant blessing, that you would live long, so have this long life if you honor your parents, and that long life would not be terrible, but it would go well for you in the land that God is giving you. So this promise is given, and if we are reading Deuteronomy and we kind of check this against things, it's going to sound kind of familiar, because this blessing is the very blessing of God's whole covenant with Israel. As Moses is talking to Israel and reminding them of the relationship that they have with God, he's over and over again reminded them, obey God so that when you live in the land, you'll live there a long time, and that it will be a blessed time living in the land. In fact, at the end of Deuteronomy 5, I think it's the last verse, perhaps, I'm forgetting right now, but at the end there, you're going to see this exact blessing listed again, but not over just the fifth commandment. It's listed over the whole of God's law. And the reason for the connection is that parents are supposed to be passing the covenant on to their kids. It's for Israel, right? Moses is telling the parents, make sure that you pass this stuff on to your children, so that when their children obey their parents, what they're actually obeying is the covenant and the laws of God. And if obedience for the parents means the blessings of the covenant, then for the children, as they honor their parents and obey the covenant, they will also receive the same blessing. And so he links this commandment special because it's really God's plan for pushing his promises and his relationship and his covenant forward generation after generation after generation. That's why honoring parents is so important. With this, as we think about the blessing, I think that there's a supported theme here that God is our Father. And that's it feels a little bit like an aside here, but it's really a theme across all of today and across the commandments, so I thought I'd bring it up. Now, I'm curious, how many of you have ever had this conversation, either as the parent or perhaps as the child, where something's going on and all of a sudden this line comes out, as long as you live in my house, you will... ... I haven't quite, I don't think I've quite pulled that out with my 6-year-old yet, but I feel like it's on the way. It's coming. That line of reasoning, as long as you live here, I'm the one providing for you. This is my home. This is my house. This is my land. This is your inheritance one day, but for right now, you're under my rule. That's what God brings up right here in the blessing, doesn't he? He says that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving to you. The land is the home of God. It's the house of God. It's the garden that he shared with his people. And he's saying, hey, you might say this to your kids when they're in your home, that they need to honor you and that they need to respect your rule and your authority. But here I am as the God who owns the land and who's given you your house and your home. You need to respect and honor me because I am your Father. I am your God. And so you've got this kind of theme being developed across the commandment. There's a blessing that comes with it. It's the blessing of the covenant. God is our Father, and so the call to action is honor parents. Treat them the way you'd want to be treated. Obey them. This is the fifth commandment. Why? Why does this matter? Why is this included in sort of like a timeless rule of God for his people? And why does Moses bring it up again? When I was a kid, I remember thinking this is sort of like the one commandment that was for me, Like as a kid, I get the fifth commandment. That's mine. As a child, I'm supposed to honor my parents. And then as an adult, sometimes I can do the same thing. I can be like, oh, that's the one that's for kids. But I think it's more than that. And to see why it matters, I want to look at how this commandment impacts the building of society, how this commandment is a symbol of our fundamental relationship with God, and how this commandment really unpacks how the authority of God is brought into our lives. So first off, the society. Have you guys ever heard the phrase, the family is the building block of the society, right? That idea, it's thrown out a lot. It's pretty common, especially in evangelical circles. But it's not just, it's not just a nice theory, and it's not just a pat in the back for parents or a call to action for parents. There's a real practical dynamic to that. As people, often the first relationship that we have with authority is going to be our mom or our dad. As people, the first people that we're going to have to learn how to live next door to are our siblings. And our first understanding of possession and ownership and then acknowledging other people's possession and ownership is when we're toddlers fighting over toys, right? So these dynamics are the building blocks. This is what forms our understanding of how to interact with society as persons who live next door, hopefully one day as good neighbors, as people who have authority in place kind of over the town and over the city, as people who have governors and kings and presidents and senates and so forth and so on, and it keeps going. But that all begins, we start to learn how to relate with that authority inside the family as we learn how to honor and respect our parents. And God cares about that. God cares about the formation of his people as a society. And so right here, as the first commandment that deals with person-to-person relationships, I suppose the Sabbath kind of does first, but this is the first proper full one focused on this. He begins with the parent and the child, saying, learn how to relate with each other first here as you respect the authority that your parents have. A lot of commentators will then take this and say, you can actually see how Moses applies this when you skip forward in Deuteronomy to chapter 17 and chapter 18. And there, Moses starts saying, you're going to have a king, you're going to have priests, you're going to have prophets, and you need to honor them the way that you learned how to honor your parents. You need to respect what they say as they bring the laws of God to you, the way that your parents, you need to respect what they said as they bring the laws of God to you. And he actually draws the point really, really specifically in Deuteronomy 17, 19 through 20. Moses says, the king is going to have this copy of God's law, and it shall be with him, and he'll read it in all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of the law and the statutes. So the king's responsible to the Lord. The Lord's given him a law, and he's looking to lead God's people in faithfulness and obedience and trust to that law. And he wraps up that section by saying, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. So, one, this is the same blessing that's given to the family, isn't it? Honor your parents so that you may live long in the land. But here it's being applied to the king, and it's the same language to talk about children and parents that's being talked about with the king now. All of those ideas begin, though, as we start to form ideas of authority in the family, respecting our parents, learning to obey the rules of the house, and then eventually we grow into persons who engage with our community and our society next door, outside of us, in the town, city, and underneath the king. And God cares about people valuing and trusting authority. So he cares about society, therefore, we can see the significance of honoring parents. It's forming that in us. The second thing, though, in this piece, the second thing that kind of shows the significance and importance, why this matters, is that this parent-child relationship, it's a symbol of our maybe most basic relationship with God. That he is our heavenly Father and we are his son or daughter. And so to picture this, I thought, this would be really exciting. We should read a genealogy. This father had this father and this father and this, super exciting stuff. Anyhow, Genesis 5 has the opening heritage, the opening family line. And in Genesis 5, it begins like this. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created. Now, your Bible might say he named him Adam when he was created. But in any case, they named him man when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. And if you follow Genesis 5, it's going to go, he fathered this person, and that person got older and fathered this person, and just keeps moving on down. It's the beginning of all family trees. But the beginning point is not the first human. It's not Adam. The beginning point is God. See, he says, God created man in his likeness and then named him. And then Adam fathered a son in his likeness and then named him. And the point that Moses is making as he records this family line is that we are all children of God. That we were made in the likeness of God, that he is our Father. And before we are anything else, God can look at us and say, my son and my daughter who has my likeness in them. And if we are all children of God, then that means that we are learning what that means every time we see our own father and our own mother. We're learning about what God is like through our parents. We're learning about how to relate to God as we relate to our parents. That's a pretty high calling to parents, isn't it? To show our children what God is like. And there's loads of parents that get that wrong. I think every parent gets that wrong. And truly, some get it more so off than others. But even so, this is the calling on parenting, to show the nature of God to our children as he is the heavenly Father of humans. So God cares about this, because this relationship is the first relationship where we start to understand who God is and how we relate to him, by trusting him, by obeying him, by understanding right and wrong as he passes it on to us, by following his rules and staying in the boundary lines. And when we rebel, there's discipline. When we fight back, as we're in that household, we see the consequences. These are all helping us form our understanding of who God is. So God really cares about it, puts it right here at the beginning of his commandments about human relationships. It's a great and powerful, poignant symbol for each of us. The last reason why I think that this matters is because more than just being symbolic, right? It's not just that the family is a symbol of God's character. The parents are actually carrying authority that comes from God. Let me clarify that. I'm not trying to say that there's some sort of arbitrary divine stamp of approval on what parents do, or the way that parents treat their kids, or the rules in the parent's house. There's no this isn't an arbitrary, parents are going to have control over their home and their children. It's more practical than that. So in the moment, Moses is speaking to Israel. Israel's standing there on the Jordan River bank, and they're looking over into Canaan. And Moses says, here is the law of God, parents. Make sure your children know it and understand it and live it. So the call to parents in Deuteronomy 4, so my slide is a little out of order here, but in Deuteronomy 4:10, he reminded them of their story, and he says to them, on the day that you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, the Lord said to me, gather the people to me that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children so. The parents' authority is basically passing God's ways, God's covenant, God's law on to their kids. So when their kids are called to honor the parents, they're being called to honor the ways of God. They're being called to honor the covenant of God that their parents are passing on to them. In Deuteronomy 12:28, we see that God's vision is both for parent and child, in that he says, be careful to obey all these words that I command you, that it may go well with you and with your children after you forever, when you do what is good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. So God cares about the parent-child relationship, and he cares about children honoring their parents because he's present in the house with them, if you will. He's there. It's his way that he is trying to bring into the lives of the children. It's his authority that he's trying to bring into the hearts and the character and the mindset of that home. And the way he's chosen to do that is by charging the parents, equipping the parents, calling the parents to bring his heart, to bring his law, to bring his way into their home, and charging the children to listen to that respectfully and with honor, obediently, as their parents give that to them and speak with that authority. So here's the commandment. Honor your parents, that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. It matters because it builds society and God cares about that. It matters because it is a symbol of our relationship with God, and it matters because God's voice is actually present when the parents are faithfully bringing God's covenant into their family. But how much does it matter? Like, how significant is this? Like, how much does God care about this? How willing is he to hold the line and toe the line here? You know, sometimes in our house we'll discipline over things, or we'll have rules, and it's pretty obvious the ones that we care a lot about and the ones that we don't care as much about, because I'll forget about the ones I don't care about, and then I don't follow through. But the ones I really care about, I follow through on. And in Deuteronomy 21:18 through 21, we see that God really cares about this because he follows through on implementing it. Read this story with me. If a man has a stubborn and a rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to him, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of his city, "This, our son, is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He's a glutton and a drunkard." And then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Happy Mother's Day. How much does God care about children honoring their parents? How much does he care about the building of his society and the symbol of understanding the heart and the nature of God and trusting him and versus rebelling against him? How much does he care about this authority that he's charged the parents with, being rebelled and rejected? Apparently quite a bit. It's a capital offense in his kingdom, in his nation of Israel. A couple qualifiers for this. I think it's helpful to have a couple guardrails up as we think about the story. First, this is God's theocracy in Israel. So God's expectation and his law to us is not directly applied in this instance. We don't, he's not saying his expectation for us as our families today, as members of his church, is that we stone our children if they are fully rebellious like this. This was an administration of God's covenant that was in place for a time that Jesus has fulfilled and brought us into a fuller picture, a fuller reality, a fuller revelation of this covenant. And so this jurisdiction administration, we're going to see it fulfilled in Jesus, but it's not necessarily abiding over us today. Yet there's still principles and the heart and character of God for us to learn about as we study it. The second thing is, I'm going to say, and I'll explain why in a second, but I'm going to say this is probably a teenager, not a toddler. There's clues in the text here that show us that this son, this rebellious son, has a certain level of engagement or a certain level of willfulness that a toddler probably can't express. Even an elementary student probably can't do. The description that's given to him of being a glutton and a drunkard, I've not heard described of necessarily like a toddler, right? Like maybe glutton, I suppose, but like drunkard is not likely. And this sort of language doesn't describe even elementary students. This is somebody who is willful enough to be able to essentially come to his parents and be like, I have decided that you need to treat me as an adult now. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to live underneath your authority. However, I will continue to need your food and I will continue to need your provision. but I reject your authority. And so you can't really describe this person in those like really young kid like ways. We'd probably call this type of person something closer to an emerging adult or a teenager. At the same time, this person is probably not an adult, a full adult yet in Israel. So this person, like in the West, we kind of keep branching and breaking our households. Like the kid leaves the home and sets up his own space, That isn't the way that this worked back in the ancient Middle East. The families would keep kind of growing and stuff, but whatever the correlation would be of somebody who'd branched off and has taken responsibility for his own life and moved on, whatever that correlation would be, that's also not this. This is not an adult who has taken ownership for his life and moved on from his parents' household. This is somebody who's still living in the home, still under the authority of their parents, but rejecting that authority knowingly and willingly. And so it's helpful to have that picture and clarity in the back of our heads as we think about this. How much does God care about children honoring their parents? And why does it matter so much? I think if we use those three principles, the society, the symbol, and the authority, we can explore this case study. God cares about how children treat their parents because he cares about the impact that has on society. If you look at the story, this private issue of a son rebelling against parents is turned extremely public. The parents have to bring him into a court system. The elders are the ones who make the decision about what happens to him. The elders hear the parents' side. Presumably, they'd also hear the child's side or the son's side. And then they decide what is the appropriate thing to do here. And God says, if it is true that he has lived this stubborn, rebellious life, then, as an example to Israel, the end of this section says, so you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear. To teach Israel, to teach my society to respect authority, that my laws administered through my kings and my priests and my prophets and the parents and the elders will be followed. To teach this person will be stoned to death. This son will be severely and publicly judged. Because God cares about his society, loving, respecting, trusting authority. At the end of the day, the authority in Israel belongs to God. And he wants them to practice that submission to authority in these spaces. He cares about it because the rebellion in the story mirrors that fundamental rebellion, I think, in humanity. It mirrors the fundamental rebellion that you see at the first story. Right? So you have, in our picture here, there's this rebellious son, right? And he's like, everything I have is coming from my parents. I live in my parents' household. I eat their food, I drink their stuff, right? But I want them to treat me as an equal. They don't get to tell me what to do. I will do what I want to do. And yet I will continue to not necessarily contribute to the family. I will continue instead to leech off the family. Now go back to the story in Genesis. You have God creating us in his image as his children, and Adam and Eve living in his home. And he says to them, all I have has been shared with you. This is your inheritance, but it's still my world. It's still my creation and my garden. So here are the ways of living in it. And Adam and Eve turn to him and say, no, we want to be treated like you. You can't tell us what to do, while at the same time we still want your life. We still want your garden. We still want your fruit. We still want these pieces from you. In fact, we need them, but we are not going to yield to your authority. So there's this mirroring going on between the two stories, between the two pictures. And it reflects, I think, our own rebellions. As people, we are the children of God, but we don't want God to have authority over us. We want the blessings that come from him. We want to leech off of the life he gives, but then we turn around and say, don't tell me what to do with that or how to live in your world. And because of the symbolism in this relationship, because the rebellion it touches on that heart rebellion, that true rebellion of our hearts against God, God deals with it severely as a picture and as a teaching for all of his people, that he takes this sin of rebellion seriously. And then I think maybe the last way to put this is that it's more than just symbolism, but this son rebelling against his parents and his parents' way, the assumption is his parents are actually teaching the ways of God. The elders are reviewing the case, and if the parents have disciplined faithfully the ways of God, they've taught faithfully the ways of God, and this son still rebels against it, he's not just rebelling against the ways of his parents, he's rebelling against the ways of God. And the specifics we don't really get into the specifics, instead just this sort of general principle. Parents are intended to pass on God's covenant. And when the children reject the parents, they are also rejecting the covenant of God. And if this son is in effect saying, no, I don't want to be treated as a little child anymore, he's kind of getting what he asked for. And he's being put on a he's being put in a public court, and he's being treated as a man of Israel. And if you reject against the way of God and the covenant of God as a man in Israel, this is the sentence. God cares about this command because it teaches us that we are children of God. We rebel against him, we're rebelling against our center of life. If we trust him, we're trusting the one who gives us life and who loves us. And I want to say that this really illustrates, it paints a portrait for us of Jesus. You know, I think about how Jesus is treated like this disobedient son, isn't he? He's brought to the elders of the city, and the elders take him outside the town, and they don't stone him, but they crucify him, as if he's this sort of rebellious, disobedient, blasphemous fighter against the covenant of God. And that's the way he's treated. But that's not who Jesus was. That's not how Jesus lived. Paul gives us this incredible picture of what Jesus' heart was, what his lifestyle was like, the way he thought about being the Son of God in Philippians chapter 2. In Philippians 2, Paul says, Jesus, though he was in the form of God, he didn't account equality with God a thing to be grasped. But he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. That's not a rebellious son. That's not a son. Look, think about the language of Genesis. He's in the likeness of God. He's in the form of God. He has the one thing that everybody else is wanting, to be treated like God, but he doesn't hold on to that with this sort of arrogant way, you owe this to me, Father. He says, I'm willing to surrender all of this to you in obedience and humility. And he takes on the likeness of humanity, and he ends up going to a cross as his Father sends him there in their plan to save the world. He's the perfect son. But he does die on that cross because you and I are the disobedient son. We have our own versions of our rebellion, whether it looked like what that son did, and we are that sort of rebellious type, and we acknowledge that, or whether it be more subtle, and we use sort of our like religion to try to control God and to try to force God to do the things we want because, I've lived a good life, and you owe this to me now, God. You must treat me as an equal because I've done everything you asked of me. We become rebels and force God to treat us as equals and demand from him the things that as a father he belong to him and he wants to give to his children, but he also calls us to the right relationship with him of love, trust, and honor and respect. Jesus' passion was glorifying and honoring the Father. He said as much. He said, if you're going to follow me, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to learn how to pray, and the first thing out of your lips is, may God be holy. Hallowed be the name of our Heavenly Father. That's my passion. If you want to follow me, that should be your passion. Jesus says, I came to show you the Father, that he'd be glorified. I want to honor my Father in heaven. And Jesus did that. If we go to the next section of the Philippians passage, we read this. Therefore, God has highly exalted Jesus and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. But the final phrase is to the glory of God the Father. Jesus got what he wanted. He wanted the Father glorified. And he was willing to humiliate himself and become obedient to the point of death in order to make that possible so that the Father would be seen across the universe and glorified. And in that process, the heart of the Father turns around to his Son and does the same thing every parent does during a piano recital. He says, I want the world to see my Son. I love my Son. I'm so proud of my Son. I exalt him. He is the one I delight in. And Jesus is exalted and honored. The Father is exalted and honored. And there's this perfect relationship of Father and Son that we all wish that we could have that type of dynamic, right? And we get to have that dynamic because Jesus turns to us and says, you are my brother and sister. Give me your sins. Let me die for you and for your rebellion. Let me give you my status as this beloved Son. And the Father will turn to you and see you with the same pride and love and joy and everything. We get to be a part of this. He is our Heavenly Father. And so, again, we just keep following the story of Philippians. Paul turns to everybody, listening and reading his letter, and he says, so then do all things without grumbling or disputing. Right? That's what you tell little kids to do. Every single day this week, we told our little kids to do things without grumbling or disputing. I was grumbling and disputing this week too. Anyway, why? That you may be blameless and innocent children of God, without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. We've been given the privilege of entering into this loving relationship, Father and Son. And as children now, we've been sent back out into the world to follow our Father, to honor him through our obedience, not with grumbling and disputing, I think with love and with joy, so that other people could also be a part of this family, so they could see the light in our lives and they would want to be a part of this relationship where their Father in heaven loves them with the love that he has for his only Son, Jesus. The section, I think I got to say this, the section that I skipped, if you were paying attention, we ended in verse 11 and then we jumped in verse 14. The section that I skipped right there talks about how God himself steps in to empower our obedience. Like if it feels overwhelming to think about following God, living with a holy God and trying to be holy as he is holy, if that feels overwhelming, God steps into the midst of that and says, don't worry, I'm going to work in you with all of my power. All of the love of Jesus, all of the Spirit's passions and desires are present in us because the Spirit's been given to us. And so this desire to love God that you see in Jesus is something that God works into you. And he takes ownership for that. So there's no need to be overwhelmed. It's a relationship of grace. Okay, the commandment. Honor your father and mother, as the Lord God commanded you, that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord is giving you. To apply it, adults, follow the golden rule, and children, obey your parents. These are simple ideas. Life can be complex. And so I'd encourage you, as you're trying to think about, God, how can I honor my parents? How can I treat them the way that I'd like to be treated as an adult? How can I prioritize doing that with this complex relationship? I'd encourage you, gather some people around you, who know your parents, and are able to speak life and challenge you and hold you accountable, but also to be able to speak grace and help you understand the healthy way of loving and honoring them. Be present. Listen. Treat them as you'd like to be treated. And children, obey your parents. Because you're learning in that relationship what it is like to trust God and to obey God. Parents, be the type of parents that teach your children what God is like and who God is like. Second, model and practice respect for authority. I think it's kind of hard to see this story and this call to respect and honor authority. I think it's sort of hard for that to land in the West. Because a lot of the times when we talk about emperors, they're evil Sith lords. When we talk about kings, like King George III, we portray them, like in Hamilton, as an abusive, manipulative, narcissistic boyfriend. We want to buck these guys. We want to cut authority down, make them treat us as equals. We're Americans. It can be hard to track with a call to action that says yield, submit to authority, respect, honor, obey authority. It can be simply difficult to believe that authority is fundamentally good. But at the end of the day, the biblical worldview says that authority belongs to God, and God is faithful and trustworthy. And we need to model and we need to practice learning what it looks like to trust that authority. If every space that we live in, we say rebels are trustworthy, and bucking authority is virtuous, if every way we talk about authority cuts it down and diminishes authority, it's going to be really hard to flip around and all of a sudden say, no, we trust God. We need to learn to model in the way that we talk about authority, maybe the way we talk about politics, the way that we speak about our parents, the way that we talk to our parents. We model and we practice respect for authority so we can learn to trust our Heavenly Father. I'll tie back to Rapunzel. In the story of Rapunzel, there's a mom and dad, but they're not very admirable. They're going after and they're stealing. They are the passions of the mom are kind of driving everything out of control. And they encounter this witch. The witch isn't very admirable. She's vindictive and judgmental and cruel. And then you meet Rapunzel. Rapunzel's not all that admirable. She ends up pregnant because she meets a guy who looks nice. And then the prince isn't very admirable because he's out of control, climbing a tower to go have this tryst with this girl. So you get to the end of the story, and no one is admirable. But there is a single voice that you do trust in the story, and it's the voice of the narrator. Presumably, the narrator is the parent, telling the story to their kids late at night or in the morning as they're teaching them what it means to live in this world. And the parent is sharing this story about these unadmirable people and what happens when you live unself-controlled lives. And the child is to trust the parent. In the same way, as we read Scripture, we are looking for the voice of our Father who is speaking to us, calling us to trust Him and follow Him. He's given us parents. He hopes that we will hear His voice in our parents. He's designed it so we would hear His voice in our parents. We would trust in Him and follow Him. And may that be true of us, that we're children of God who hear His voice, trust Him, and follow Him. Please pray with me.